Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another version of Bill Rhoden On Sports here in Harlem, USA, high above the fray in Harlem, USA. It's a very special place.
I like that.
Yeah, Harlem, USA, an undisclosed location.
For now.
Well, for now, I think we're debating about whether to let people know, but you don't know hoard, particularly with gentrification, man. Next thing you know, how much you want for this place? Anyway, here with my co-host and guest, great Jamal Murphy. Jamal.
Of course, great to be here.
Right. And we have a really special guest. As you listen to the podcast, you'll hear me say special guest. But this is really a pleasure, man. Our guest today is the great Solomon Wilcots, broadcaster extraordinaire, intellectual, media intellectual. His official thing, I mean, Solomon is an analyst. He's a Emmy Award-winning broadcaster with CBS Sports Network and Sirius XM. I hear him a lot, Sirius XM, and I always look forward to hearing. So anyway, Solomon Wilcots, welcome.
Well, I appreciate it,
before I heap praise on you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you even having me here today with you.
Oh no, man! But here's the thing, man. There's certain people. I've been in this business since 1973. And, we're constantly monitoring black folks in the industry. Who's for us, who's kind of selling out, who's kind of neutral. But there's certain people invariably who I always trust. I trust the perspective, whether I agree because at the end of the day, this brother is a real brother, and he's coming from a place where it's honest and sincere. And we've had a lot of conversations over here about a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I can honestly say, man, whenever I hear you, and particularly if it's going to be an issue, I will focus in, hone in, because I know that whatever you say is black folks first. No matter whether I agree, disagree, but it's about black folks first, and I trust you with it. And there are not that many guys, man, because, in our industry, man, cats can get, before they know it, man, they get seduced, and you say, man, how the fuck he come up with that?
You say they're all over the place.
All over the place. It always comes. We've looked at the perspective. Where they end up is where the establishment wants them to end up. No matter what they say, they end up in the status quo. But man, so this is the first time we've ever done anything professional together. So I want to say thank you. But I always want to let you know how much I admire you, your professionalism, your perspective, and your blackness.
Well, I appreciate that. I think what we're speaking to also is what you call integrity, right, in one's professionalism and approach to work. The great Dr. Miles at the University of Colorado, where I went to school, he always taught us to understand where we come from, who we are, what is our purpose in life, and what do we do with our platform? And to understand who we come from in terms of what do we represent, I think is real critical in terms of establishing a foundation for perspective. And I think we can love all people. And I know you've always done that. You have friends and causes that you represent that really speaks to greater unity. And that's what we're about. It's what I've always been about. It's what my parents have always taught me. But I think we can always love who we are, right, appreciate where we've come from and what we've overcome, and still be inclusive in everything that we do.
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of times people, and this is not why we're here, because we're here. Solomon, you're the ambassador for something called Huddle Up for new Alzheimer's.
For new Alzheimer's treatments, absolutely.
Which I think is really, really important, and they couldn't have picked a better ambassador. And I want you to kind of tell us what it is and all that stuff. Before we do that, though, I want to take care. I mean, people, it's football season, man. So
that's
people
right.
Kind of like, frothing, man. We didn't have to sit
excited.
We didn't have to sit through the NBA, which is fine. That's exciting. But now in the baseball thing, okay, man. I mean, really? When you look at when is this?
And football is king. We know that.
Oh, football's king. No question about it. Right. So we're going to talk a lot about that, and I want to talk but a couple things I before I forget. Speaking of Alzheimer's, before I forget, the point I wanted to make about this idea of loving everybody. The thing is, you could be black and you could have tons of friends. I mean, you could love a lot of. You may not even know any other black, but you could still love yourself, love the history of your people, what it took to get you to this particular moment in time, which was, the deeper you study our history, the more it's almost unbelievable. It's almost like, you couldn't even make this kind of stuff up. But it's all about people helping each other to get to this point of survival. So to your point, you could love everybody, but I think you got to be committed. You got to do your role to help us move the ball forward.
Well, there's no doubt that if any man, if he truly has love for community, doesn't it start at home?
Yeah.
So you start at home in terms of love, development, growth, and then it extends to your community. Then it extends to even a greater community, and then it becomes global. Right. I think if you look at every great leader, whether it was Martin Luther King, whether it was Gandhi, whomever, it started at home first, right, and then it starts with community, and then it goes global.
Yeah, absolutely. Then the second thing I want to get before we get into your role with Huddle Up, we're going to talk about Colin Kaepernick later. But before I forget it, I just want to get your quick take on it. You played in the league for 6 years. Mm-hmm. You played with Cincinnati,
Minnesota, and
Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So in other words, I say that because you're not making this up. You're not a Pharisee. I mean, you stood on the sideline. You stood with guys doing different things. Just quick take. What's your take on Kaepernick?
First of all, when I looked at it, I know a lot of people were really taking shots at him and really going hard in on him. At the end of the day, what I do is I look back and I say, first of all, what is the purpose of doing something? I think he has a good and just cause in terms of his commitment and his passion of understanding a lot of people who are suffering in various communities and in the black community when it comes to law enforcement. He is aware. He could easily be blind and run off with his millions and not care about anyone. But at the end of the day, where I stand is understanding that the national anthem, what it represents is many of those people who have sacrificed and given of their lives, made the ultimate sacrifice, so that we could have a right to protest under the law. Right. And that's what it means to be American, that we get to disagree with one another, that people get to protest, people get to do a lot of different things, but it's the freedom that other people fought for that gives us the right to be able to disagree, to be able to not stand up if we want. And so I think, first of all, we have to respect his right to do so. Right. But also I think we should always, when the national anthem is being played, where my heart and my mind goes to are those people who sacrificed their lives so that we can enjoy these great freedoms to debate some real critical issues. And so for me, it starts with that. So I don't have a problem every time I'm standing in the broadcast booth and that national anthem is being played, I'm standing up. Right. I remember watching, real quickly, Chris Paul, LeBron James, they were all at the ESPYs and they stood up for something that was very important. I thought it was very appropriate. I thought it was a great form for what they wanted to do. But you and I both know, no matter what you do, no matter the statements, the protests, whatever, at the end of the day, it's got to be effective. Right. And so I think that really, when you talk about time and place, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, it's got to be effective. And so I would, and we can talk about this a little bit more, Colin Kaepernick, what he believes in terms of the cause, I think is wonderfully appropriate. Being that it is a team sport, and you're hijacking a team moment, okay, might want to choose maybe another time and place where he can be more effective in helping and furthering that cause.
But it seemed to be somewhat, pretty effective to me, because we're talking about it. Everybody's talking about it.
But real quick, Jamal, what are we talking? We're talking about whether or not we support what he did or if we like what he did. Right. But we really are not talking about what he stood up for. So we're not talking about the greater issue.
400 years old, though.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
And just like in 60, again, we'll talk about this later. Mm-hmm. But in 1968, I was like 18 years old, and Tommy Smith, John Carlos, who two of the baddest sprinters in the country, Tommy Smith won the gold medal in the quarter mile. John Carlos won the bronze, and they raised their fist on a stand. We talk about that 40 years later, but they got killed for it. And the point is,
they suffered big time.
But there is no right time for protest.
Yeah.
It's going to be unpopular.
Yeah.
If he would have done it, if he would have had a team meeting or done it during a press conference or said, we're going to meet at the local boys club and I'm going to tell you my grievances to people, you know what? Mostly we ain't coming because we got to cover. So, and we really should get this when we get to the football section of this thing. But there is no right time for protest. But there is a correct time. The thing you're involved with, man, you're at sort of the epicenter of one of the major issues, not just in football, but in contemporary society, which is this dreadful disease of Alzheimer.
That's right.
And so I just want you to, you're the ambassador for Huddle Up for new Alzheimer's treatment, the kickoff, which is included in memory screening, alumni. So I just want to, you started it at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, at Super Bowl 50 in San Francisco.
Yeah. So just tell us what it is, why you got involved with this, what your role is, and what you guys hope, speaking of being effective, what you want to accomplish.
Yeah, what we like to accomplish is really to help people to understand that, for instance, all the diseases that have afflicted mankind, and let's be more specific, the Alzheimer's disease, which some 5 million Americans are suffering from this dreaded disease. Roughly 46 million people globally around the world. This disease is spreading. It's growing. By the year 2050, that number is expected to triple globally. I think it's just an incredible number. So we have to do something about it. Now, I kind of felt like if there was an opportunity to help, which was presented to me, and I'm 51 years old, hopefully Alzheimer's isn't in my future, but just by looking at the numbers, maybe myself, family member, close friend, someone's doing battle with this disease. But if I have an opportunity to help, and someday down the road, here I am having to deal with it more directly, and I could not sleep. I couldn't live with myself knowing I had an opportunity to help and didn't step up. And so I wanted to step up and see what is it that I could do and how can I use my presence and my place to bring about a greater solution. And so the real solution is, and that's why we created the campaign Huddle Up for New Alzheimer's Treatment, Bill, which is really to bring about greater awareness for people in society to participate in clinical trials. As you well know, given the history of clinical trials, a lot of people have a lot of fears and phobias and would back off. Well, no drug that has been approved by the FDA that you and I may use today for any illness that may inflict us, there are treatments for it. Well, all of them had to go through some kind of FDA approval process, which means that someone had to enroll into a clinical trial, and then it had to go through those trials, found to be safe and effective. And now we have those treatments today for healing purposes. So someone stood up in way of leadership to be able to take on that role. And that's what Huddle Up for New Alzheimer's Treatments are about. Is about really helping people to understand how they can participate in clinical trials and the need and the importance for participating in those trials to bring about new treatments.
So if, well, it's interesting. You off mic, you were saying that although you launched this at the Super Bowl, people lumped this whole thing in with concussions and football, and they're two completely different things, and it's such a volatile, highly political thing. But there's Alzheimer's, and then there's the concussion thing, which may or may not lead into
dementia.
Dementia, because we were saying there are a lot of people who never made a tackle.
There you go.
Who never in their lives who have developing Alzheimer's. Right?
Yeah.
So you have to make this distinction.
You have to. I think this is about education and about bringing some clarity and understanding to what's going on here. If we talked about the 5 million Americans who suffer from Alzheimer's, roughly more than half of those are women who never participated in a collision sport like football. Right. And so we do know that Alzheimer's is not a direct link to, just because I played football, I'm going to get Alzheimer's. Now, having repeated concussion syndromes can lead to Alzheimer's. It can lead to dementia. It can lead to a lot of other issues, but the two really are separate when you think about more than half of the people who have been inflicted with this disease are women. And so we can't just start with a concussion conversation if we're really going to get to the solution of helping people with this dreaded disease. Imagine yourself to still have all your physical abilities. Okay, you still can move, and you're great heart, great lungs, you're healthy, but yet you lose your cognitive health, and you can't remember things. And so now they're not going to let you cook for yourself. They're going to take away your driver's license and not allow you to drive. You lose your independence. And so now a caregiver, a family member, someone close to you has to come in and monitor you 24 hours a day. Okay, because no one's going to trust you to get where you're going, to remember what you need to do, whether it's taking your medicine, to put your clothes on, to feed yourself, some of the things that are lost as Alzheimer's begins to take over one's life. And so it is really critical, because we talked about the 5 million Americans who suffer from Alzheimer's. They all have a caregiver. So really it affects more than the 5 million. You can double that, because there's a caregiver has to give up work, give up their lives to really take care of a loved one. And that's how much it has a real drain on our economy. And so we want to do is everything we can to help push across these new treatments across the goal line, that they would be made available for the people who need it.
And not to mention the family. The entire family is no question affected.
Absolutely.
In profound ways.
That's right.
Right. And I think what you're trying to do, I think where it gets confusing, because the whole thing with concussions is so thing, is and we'll get to this later, but what you want to do in the environment in which you played, you had a lot of ball players. So, well, we want to bring we want to get a lot of volunteers. I'm a journalist, so I would get a lot of people in journalism to do the test. Somebody might be a chemist. You were a former football player, so okay, well, in my particular circle, I'd like to get a lot of former players to do this, because I guess there could be a link between concussions and Alzheimer's. That's not why you're doing this, but there could be a link, right? So it's a really tricky kind of thing, but you just basically want former football players, because that's the environment from which you come. You want to get players from, right?
And also, Bill, as you well know, if when athletes get involved with a cause, the general population tends to follow.
Right.
So we wanted to bring with it a greater awareness for the need for people to understand that it is important to participate in clinical trials. Now, it makes sense for former athletes in a couple of ways. One of which is that we have the notoriety. We're going to unify our purpose in terms of bringing awareness to the issue, but we also get to test our own cognitive health. We've held memory screenings all around the country, beginning in San Francisco at Super Bowl 50, where we had a lot of former players come to the screening. They get education about Alzheimer's. The doctors give them a test to test their cognitive health. And obviously the players, did pretty good. There was no one who was found to be suffering from Alzheimer's. But what it also did, it helped them to establish a baseline for their cognitive health. Right. So as they get older, they would take the test annually each year, and if they were to see any slippage, they could begin to become aware of what's going on with their cognitive health, begin to seek treatments, and then they can become more proactive in staving off the onset of this disease. Now, we did this in San Francisco. We held memory screenings in Los Angeles, Cincinnati, in Orlando, in Toronto as well. And so we've held it in several cities around the country where we had former NFL players act as ambassadors to drive coverage and drive awareness and information in their own local communities. And we've seen a great high number of participation where we're able to get the word out, we're able to educate, and we're able to get people enrolled in the clinical trial that we need to be able to push these new treatments across the goal line.
So how does the average person go about getting a screening for themselves or their family members?
Well, we're having screenings in various cities around the country, and we'll be able to give you a list of those cities where we're having the screenings. And then when you come to the screening, you'll have information for the doctors in those specific cities, because those doctors are part of a greater study. It's called the Mindset Study. and those doctors are enrolled to participate in the clinical trial to bring their patients in. And so that's the process. We start with the screening, and then obviously we connect you with the doctors in those local communities. It's not in every city around the country, but it's in several cities. And so we'll make sure you have a list of some of those cities, and some of them I've already named.
Because we were saying, I mean, as I was hearing you speak, what happens? I'm listening to this. I'm like, I want to do it like next week. How do I do it if I'm, Bill Rhoden or Jamal or Kevin, our sound guy over here? Kevin, how are you? But he's too young. See, this Kevin, what are you, 25 or something? 26. So this is completely irrelevant. However, you may listen to it and say, you know what, I would like to. So how will we do it? How do we if I listen to this and I want to make an appointment to be on the study, we want to figure out how can we do this, because that's basically what you want people to do, right? You just want people to
become proactive, participate, and know the steps to take for you, for yourself or a family member, really.
Because like we were saying, every single person probably in this room, is David over here. Hey, David, we haven't brought you to the. Hey, David, come on over to the share. We're gonna set up.
No, it's okay because this is one way that you can go about finding out exactly what you can do. If you have any concerns, there is a global study that's being done, and it's called the Mindset Study. So you can go to the website at www.alzheimersglobalstudy.com, www.alzheimersglobalstudy.com. So that's where you can go. You'll be able to access all the information. You'll know what cities that the doctors are participating in the study.
Okay.
And you can actually locate all the information on that website as to where you can go.
Oh, good. Very good. Okay. Very good. Yeah. We're going to take a real quick break. But when I come back, I do want to stay in the arena because I've got a lot of friends, who played in the league. I've been playing the game since I was, Pop Warner, and I, got off the train in college. You kept on the train for like 6 years. Some people in the train for 13, some 18. And I think that, everybody who's been on the train, given everything we know about the sport, has got to start reflecting and saying, well, so what I want to ask you when we come back is, hey, what do you know now that you wish you would have known when you first started playing? And then let's just talk about the wear and tear of the game itself. I mean, we all love the game. Every here we just love the game, and that's kind of like one of these dilemmas. We love the game, but we also know, So when we come back, we're going to get a little more inside the arena and talk about how can we continue to love it and digest it, but still be kind of looking at it at a broader view. But We'll be back. My guest is a great Solomon Wilcots. He's an award-winning broadcaster for CBS and for Sirius XM, and he's the ambassador of Huddle Up for new Alzheimer's treatment. We'll be right back in a couple minutes. Hello, everybody. We're back. Bill Rhoden on Sports. Jamal Murphy. What's happening?
I'm good.
All right. We're back with my friend and colleague, Solomon Wilcots. He's the ambassador to Huddle Up for new Alzheimer treatment. And he's also an award-winning broadcaster, football analyst for CBS Sports and for Sirius XM. I love hearing you. Either way, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks,
really,
Bill.
Man. And actually, also, what I also love what you do, man. Aside just the lift every voice and sing, but also just your analysis is always just so right on, man. Just where's your birthday, by the way?
October 9th.
October 9th.
What's that? What is that?
Well, I don't know.
Full-fledged Libra.
Full-fledged Libra. No, actually, my daughter is October 4th.
Okay. Good people, right?
My dad was Libra. Oh, Libras are great people.
That's right.
Ozier is a Libra.
Okay. No, but definitely as a broadcaster, when I hear, I've never met you before. This is the first time, but when I hear your voice on a game, I know I'm getting a straight up professional analyst, knows what they're talking about, and responsible on the air. Like, you just know what you're in for.
That.
Right,
I appreciate it. And I think, when you've been doing it for a long time, but you start out just really wanting to help people to understand the game a little bit better. But you also have to have a healthy amount of respect for the game. I respect all the people, the coaches, the players, the hard work and the commitment that goes into it. These guys don't just show up on Sunday and say, okay, let's put on a show. There's a lot of work that goes into it. But we want to help our viewers to understand the why. You can see for yourself when you're watching a game the what. But you need to know why this play was successful, or maybe why the defense didn't succeed, or why they failed on this specific play. We don't try to single anyone out, but sometimes when you have to shed light on why things happen, it is what it is. Absolutely.
I know you're not trying to do it, but
it is what it is.
You got to do what you got to do, man.
That's right. You remember a guy named Kenny Burrow?
Absolutely.
Wide receiver.
Yes.
So I was partially responsible for him being a first-round draft pick. I played at Morgan State.
Yeah.
And so I started. My first year as a starter was my sophomore year at Morgan. It was like a disaster. It was like I'm playing the right corner. And Mark, you remember Mark Washington? Mark Washington, who was a left corner, but he's one of my best friends. He was a senior, and he was a left corner.
Okay.
And so, but Mark, we played in high school together. But so by that time, '69, he was a senior. Ray Chester was on that team.
Raymond Chester, man. Yeah.
So, but meanwhile, at the end of the year, we're playing at the Astrodome. So I've been having this awful season. My first year started, and the first game we played was right here down the street at Yankee Stadium. We played Grambling, and I'm like, oh man, it was just. So one of my coaches said, Bill, no, he's a Rhoden. You've given them more points in one season than our entire defense gave them last year. That kind of shit.
All by yourself.
All by myself, single-handedly. But anyway, so we're going into the Astrodome to play Texas Southern. They got Dr. David Mays, who's a quarterback. They had Nate. They just were loaded. So I'm like, as we're going down there, I'm like, look at their press guide, and they hear 00 Kenny Burrow. on the cover of the thing, and that's the guy I'm guarding. And so we had Brute, who was our scout, and back at HBCU, he said, "Oh, the boy," and he wore white shoes. Yeah. "Oh, the boy is no good. He wears white shoes, that kind of shit." So I'm like, looking at the damn Brute. He looks pretty good to me.
He looked pretty good.
So of course he scored. He beat me for 3 touchdowns that game.
Oh, okay.
At one point,
I get it.
It was awful. But at one point, he ran a pattern, and he dropped it. And so he grabbed the ball, came over to me, and said, "I dropped that." Just to let me know.
Just to let you know it wasn't about you.
It wasn't me. I had no role in that at all.
Not about you.
Not at all. But so I bring this up because, when everybody's talking about Richard Sherman and talking trash, as a defensive back, I said, listen, man, fuck that. Because they have no mercy on us. I have no mercy on them.
That is so
true.
That is so true.
It's all good because I know that when you scorch me, you're going to be dancing.
They're going to let you know about it.
So when you do, I'm going to let you know.
That's right.
So this is like
That's right.
Richard.
It's amazing personalities come into play. Darrelle Revis is not a big talker,
right,
but he'll shut you down. Now, Deion Sanders was a big talker.
Right.
He was going to let you know that he shut you down. Another receiver that was a great receiver, I can name you 2 of the guys, the most preeminent receivers during the time I was in the league. One was Steve Largent. The other was Jerry Rice. Neither one of those guys were trash talkers. Right. They were not the Terrell Owens or Chad Johnsons or Des Bryant of the world. They were just quiet killers, man. They were that quiet storm, When they blew through town, they took everything with them. And they just kind of left you scratching your head. But they were great, but they were not big talkers. So we've seen on both sides of the ball it being done both ways. There's no doubt.
Who were the big trash talkers in your day, wide receiver-wise?
Webster Slaughter. He was a big-time trash talker. Like Sterling Sharp was a guy who talked trash, but he loved you. He didn't want to wake up that sleeping giant. He was like, "It's okay, man. You can do better. You can do better." Which is probably the worst of all trash. You can do better.
Don't worry about it.
I know you're gonna get better for the game over. And after the game, he pats you on the back. Well, next week you're gonna get him next week though. He was great.
There's a guy Darryl Johnson, who is defense, but he played at Morgan. And the year I was learning how to play, I went to Morgan as a wide receiver in spring practice. So anyway, but Darryl was, came back. He played for the Patriots, and he was talking about playing against Lance Allworth. Mm-hmm. And he said Lance kind of talked a little bit of trash too, but he was saying that for this particular game, he said he must have got the better of Allworth. And he said something to him. I remember he said, at the very end of the game, he said Allworth was pissed because Darryl been talking trash to him all game, and so Allworth said, I'm gonna see you. I'm gonna see you down in San Diego. Darryl said, "Yeah, I'll be there. Will you?"
Ooh,
but the point is, Lance. Of course I'm gonna be there.
Of course, Lance gonna be there.
What it taught me is that there's no logic to the trash talking at all.
Oh,
there's absolutely no logic
Right.
to it all. You just get in your licks
Absolutely.
that moment, that day,
That's right.
and it's not connected to
It
anything.
don't even have to be connected to reality.
Right.
Because Lance Allworth, he's one of the greatest the game has ever seen.
Right.
So yeah, he's going to be there. I just find it hard to believe that Bambi was a trash talker because that was his nickname, right? Bambi.
Bambi, man. That boy. What
was a
Richard
bad
Pryor
dude.
say about Jerry West? He said, man, he be making ends look ridiculous.
He was that good.
Because he said, Darryl said, man, I said, well, man, could he jump? He said, man, I went up to deflect something, and I looked up, and I saw like size 13.
On the bottom of his shoe.
On the bottom of the shoe. Lance Allworth was terrible. A lot of people just remember he ended up with Dallas. And they remember that part, but they don't remember this cat, man. Who
San
was
Diego, with the Chargers.
Oh, man, it was just terrible.
Yeah.
But, one thing I wanted to ask you, well, now you would play mostly corner, mostly safety.
I played corner during my first year in the league, and then everything else was at the safety position.
Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
About your adventures at safety and
Okay.
corner. But before we left, we spent a lot of time talking about the rigors of the game. It's a tough game. It's a hard game, and there's absolutely nothing I don't think you could do to make the game. I guess you but the essence of the game is collision. That's why people love it. That's why it's the game. But when you look back, I asked you, what do you know now that you wish you would have known your first couple years in the league about safety, about health, about what you could have done maybe to made the game safer, made your own things. So you seem to have gotten through it without a lot of...
I came through it because, 6 years, it was sort of like I had to make a decision. Did I want to go on with the other areas of my life, or did I really want to put everything on the line? Did I really want to put it all on the line for this game called football? You got to understand, Bill, I saw players who did that, and it didn't always end so well for them. They put it all on the line. And in those days, we didn't have all the programs that the league has today. We didn't have a league-sanctioned internship programs. We didn't have league-sanctioned continuing educational programs to help you learn how to invest your money, to help you. You had to do all of those things on your own. And so in pursuing a lot of those things, which I tried to make sure I had led a life that was well balanced. While I loved football, I couldn't make football my everything. That was clear that you could put a lot into it, but you can't put everything into it.
Right.
Now, so I think knowing what I know today is that I could have given more to it and still been okay.
Oh, really?
But I was one of those guys. You got to understand, as a rookie in 1987, when I came into the league, made the team as an 8th round pick. Back then there was no free agency, so you had to beat out a true veteran.
Right.
If you were a rookie, particularly as an 8th round pick, to stick. You had to come in doing very well. You had to be balling. And so to be able to win that job, and then 2 weeks later, there was an NFL strike, and I'm out of a job.
Right. That's right.
So right then and there, I knew not to trust it. I was like, when they say NFL is an acronym which stands, it means not for long.
Right, that's right.
I understood that all too well. So I immediately saying, you know what? I need to begin to find what am I going to do next. And I don't need to stick around and wait for the league to tell me your time is up. I need to develop an exit strategy.
Right.
So I was that kind of guy. I didn't go and say I'm going to play 10 years. I'm going to stick around as long as I can. I was one of the guys who said I'm going to play until I find something else, and that's what I did. And that's what I did. Now, knowing what I know today, that I could have still taken care of a lot of those things and still continued to play a longer period of time, because you now know that you can't go back and play again.
Right.
You know,
right.
You can't. It's over.
Right. It's over.
You don't get a do-over.
That's right. When it's over. Somebody told Brett Favre that. They told him when he was just deciding whether to retire or not, to just remember that you will probably not be as happy in terms of being gratified after you've died than you are now. So make sure that when you walk away,
you got everything out of it.
Right, that you got everything
and that's a really good piece of advice to give the players.
Let me ask you this. What you played at the University of Colorado. Now, you're from Los Angeles.
Yeah, I grew up in Compton, California.
I don't know that many,
bro.
Oh, from Compton.
Yes.
Oh, that's a whole nother podcast there, brother.
Right? How'd you end up in Cincinnati?
Yeah. Which Compton did you grow up? There are all kinds of Comptons now.
Yeah.
Are there?
Trust me.
There are different types of, or is
There's
it just
only
one?
one.
I didn't know that.
It's like if I told you it's different kind of Harlem, you know.
Well,
There are
There's
now.
a Spanish Harlem, I guess.
Well, now there's gentrified. There are all kinds of Harlem.
Yeah,
Yes, I grew in Harlem.
Not in
not
Compton. No, there's only one Compton.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. So you grew up in Compton.
Mm-hmm. Grew up in Compton. I went to University of Colorado.
How'd you get there?
And
how did you?
out of high school, I went to high school in Riverside, California. So my dad had moved out to Riverside. He said, "Hey, you know what? I can't let you go to high school here. You got to come on out and stay with me." So I went and did that. And then my coach was awesome. He saw me and said, "Hey, if you do what I tell you, you'll be able to earn a scholarship to college." And for me, I think one of the turning points was one summer, my high school coach, he took myself. I played cornerback, took the other defensive back. He was a corner as well. His name was Jerome Tyler. We were good friends in high school. And he took us one summer to a camp. It was a passing camp, kind of. It was at Sid Gilman. He ran this camp at Point Loma College. Wow. And many of the coaches who were there were young coaches who studied at the feet of Sid Gilman. So just for those listeners who don't understand, Bill Walsh was one of the coaches who fell off the tree of Sid Gilman. Wow. So did Joe Gibbs, Don Coryell. Some of the great coaches you've seen come through this league had learned at the feet of Sid Gilman. But during that period of time when I was in the camp, my defensive back coach was a young guy who had attended at San Diego State. He was a coach there. His name was John Fox.
Oh, wow.
There's another coach over there. He had attended at BYU. His name was Brian Billick.
Oh, wow.
There was another coach there who was coaching at the camp. His name was Sean Payton. Wow. These guys were all young guys, and I just remember them. And so then I ended up being recruited to go to college, and many of them came back and said, "Hey, I want you to come." And Brian Billick always teases me. He said, "I was coaching at San Diego State. You wouldn't even let me through the front door." And I said, "Coach, it's okay, And but I ended up signing to go to the University of Colorado. Had a great life there. It was wonderful. I picked the campus because it was far away from the things that I had known and had experienced growing up in Compton, and was able to grow without any of the boundaries and the mindsets that really had, I think, crippled many of my friends who were better than I was even in athletics, but yet not able to escape some of the trappings of our surroundings. So it offered me a opportunity to grow, a free life of education, understanding, enlightenment, some of the things that we're all after. And it was a period that changed my life.
What did you think of Straight Outta Compton, the movie? Speaking since we're on it,
were you an NWA fan?
I will say this. Yeah, of course I am. Yeah. Absolutely. And it depicted the times perfectly. It really did. I think it was done very accurately. And what it showed you, now this is, remember, in the 80s. This movie takes you back in time, and it shows us, we were talking about Colin Kaepernick and, the issues that he's standing up for. It really shows some of the problems in society where there's a disconnect between young people and law enforcement. And they clearly went through it as young people. And I remember being pulled over. I'm in Compton. I came home for Christmas break. And I'm driving the car. My license had expired because my birthday's in October. I'm in Boulder, Colorado. I don't get my license renewed in the state of Colorado. I'm waiting until I come back home. I remember being pulled over, and I remember thinking, you better put your hands on the steering wheel.
Right.
You better not flinch. You better not move. You better say and do all the right things. But, my parents had taught us how to understand, what we were dealing with. But I remember just talking to the officer. He had asked me, he says, hey, your license is suspended. What's going on here? And I explained, hey, I just got home for Christmas break. I'm away, in college during, my birthday when it expired, but I will be getting it taken care of. And he says, you know what? You seem like a good kid. He said, get this taken care of. And it was a wonderful exchange. So what I teach my kids today, Bill, and I am the father of 2 boys, and I told them, I said, listen, really what officers want, when they pull you over, they don't know what they're dealing with.
Exactly.
So you fit a stereotype.
That's right.
And that's where their starting point is. But what your starting point has to be is with utmost respect. Exactly. Because your life is on the line. Right. You don't know it, but it's critical. Right. How you handle it, and you've got to be proactive. Right. And so give the officer respect. I believe, and this is just what I believe, there are bad people on both sides of this issue now. Right. Okay, let's be honest. And so, but I do believe that when you meet and greet people with respect, it's, I believe a lot in what Martin Luther King taught us, that love does conquer hate. Yeah, that you can overcome hatred with love. And people, there's no one that when you treat them with a great deal of respect and love, they kind of have to open up a little bit. They got to soften up a little bit. Right. Now, that's just how I was raised. So I was fortunate to grow up under that kind of teaching, and I know it's made a difference in my life.
All right. Speaking of love and football, we talked about, I was trying to talk about the game itself, which we all really enjoy, but it is a very tough game. Is there a way, because, that's sort of the I've been in situations where, people who run sections of newspapers, their whole thing is, we're going to get rid of the NFL. I said, well, that ain't going to happen.
It ain't going
That ain't going to happen. but people do it because they wanted that to be kind of like
a headline, right?
Their thing, and that's what I was known for. But that ain't going to happen because, but how do you, can the game be made safer? Because like I said, what people love is the rock'em sock'em, hard hits, that kind of stuff. Can you make the game safer without kind of castrating the game?
I will tell you this. I think a lot of the initiatives that the league has put forth, and this starts at youth football, through high school, through college, and now you're seeing it on the NFL. I was very skeptical as to whether or not they could teach defensive players, defensive backs, to take the head out of the game. Right. I grew up in the days of watching Jack Tatum. And, there's like head hunters on the defense side of the ball, Dick Buckus. But I have seen it. I've seen concussions have come down. The number of hits on defenseless players have come down. Players have learned to move that target line down in a safer area. Right. They have legislated safety into the game. I don't think our game is any less exciting as a result of it. In fact, I think it's exciting as it's always been, if not even more exciting, due to the passing game. And the numbers show that we have more fan participation, more energy, and more excitement in our game. So I was skeptical, but I am telling you right now, I think the initiatives that the league has passed has worked. I think our game is safer. And at the end of the day, Bill, I'm in that age demographic now where I have a lot of former teammates, a lot of guys who have played, a lot of former players who are not doing so well. And when you see that, when you spend time with them, when you see that they're not quite themselves, that there are some issues and that there are medical problems that the family and that these players are going to have to deal with, then you have to embrace some of the changes that you're seeing implemented in our game today. So I think our game is going to always be exciting. I think it's going to always draw people that say, hey, we want to play. I know there's a movement, women, mothers saying we don't want our kids to play.
Right.
But here's the deal. As long as these salaries are what they are, and as long as we've got people living in pockets of our society who are still hungry and driven to chase that American dream and achieve wealth, and not only that, in football, you know what else you get? You learn how to be a great leader. You learn how to be a great teammate. Right. You learn how to work well with others. You learn how to overcome adversity. You talked about some of the things you experienced in college where Ken Burrows was torching you. You learned how to overcome failure, didn't you? You learn how to overcome that.
Not
Sure
that
did.
night, but
Not that day. But you
Right.
learned that
You come
it did
back,
not
right.
define Bill Rhoden.
Right.
You found your place in society. You found a voice.
Right.
And so that really is what sports teaches us.
Right.
And so the NFL and football, whether you're playing at the little league level, high school or college and professional level, all of those virtues are there to be taught, learned, and honed in the fire of adversity. Because you're going to get it handed to you on the football field.
Absolutely.
But it's better than being on that sideline and never experiencing those moments that offer you growth and development overall.
Right. Yeah. Well said. I mean, the thing is, the game is one of the things I think should happen. At the end of the day, the game is still the game. It's still a game of collision.
Absolutely.
And there could be some people who are just genetically prone to develop a lot of Alzheimer or whatever.
Concussion.
And
whatever.
we know that's the case because, as you mentioned before, people who never played a game, made a tackle, come down with this type of stuff.
Yeah. And so what I was thinking should happen is that and this is where I kind of fault the NFL and the Players Association, that there are billions of dollars being made. I would love to say, in fact, Ron Johnson, who was a friend of mine, is now in a home, and his wife, Karen, one of her initiatives, she wanted to have a few homes built around the country that almost were specific to men who had played the game, who have to be in these nursing homes at a relatively younger age. And that these places because the place where Ron was, he's like relatively a young guy. You had people like 80 and that kind of stuff. And I think the Pro Football Hall of Fame is constructing one. But these homes around the country where if you develop, you'd be at this place with kind of like-minded sort of people. Because like you're saying, you may be fit physically and all that kind of stuff, but mentally.
That's where the decline is. Yeah.
And so there's enough money. This is talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry that you could finance. You could have these homes around the country, maybe 5, 6, I don't know the number. To me, I would love to see that. So he said, listen, we're signing a covenant here. When you come into this game, we know that you and I are signing a covenant. You're signing, that there's a hell of a chance that when you come out of this, you're going to need some help. We're going to give you that help.
Here, and you mentioned it. The NFL is currently building a facility in Canton, Ohio, with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, that will take care of players in those aging years or when they have fallen to some kind of illness or disease. They're building essentially a village for former players, a place where they can go and be with guys who they feel a kindred spirit with, who played in the National Football League. And hopefully they'll have some of their memories left to be able to share some of those. And in some cases, they won't. People should know that when you see players who are fined on Sundays, whether it's hit on defensive players, whether it's conduct detrimental, or whatever, you see these players being fined, everybody always asks, where does that money go? Right? Did you know that money goes into the funds that are created to help take care of former players? It goes toward former player benefits. And so many of these players who are being fined today, they're going to come full circle one day, because every single player in the NFL is soon to be a retired NFL player. And that money's going to come full circle back to them. I don't think that's something that's talked about enough. Certainly there needs to be more education on some of these issues. But certainly the league is working to develop and building a home for former players in conjunction with the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio.
That's great. There should probably be more of them, but that's a great – that's what we're talking about.
That's exactly what you were talking about.
We're talking about there's a certain reality to all this stuff. I mean, if you climb mountains, I mean, there's a I don't have the number of people every year who are killed, climbing mountains. I mean, whatever you do outside your little comfort zone,
some inherent risk.
Something's going to happen. And I think that when you could kind of pick on the NFL, and I'm not trying to diminish it, but I think people have an agenda. And of course, this is for another telecast, but I'm always aware of how do things affect black folks. And historically, the areas where black folks, particularly black men, dominate, there's this kind of knee-jerk thing in society to start attacking it. whether it's
to dismantle it, to
whether
take
it's
it
black
apart.
jockeys, wherever we dominate, it's almost, and I guess that's what racism is. There's this knee-jerk thing to begin to attack it. So I'm thinking, whether it's we're like what 70-something, 67% of the NFL, the NBA, and it's making money, but I think there's always this undergird of how do we kind of take care of this. How do we take care of it? Well, let's make it so everybody can play. When I hear words like that, but everybody, here we go. Because like you said, football got to the point, man, how many places in society can young black men particularly wreak havoc legally? Not that many areas where you can just wreak havoc legally.
You can't just go and hit someone upside the head and think there's not going to be some consequences. And even in the National Football League now, you can't even hit somebody upside the head. Right. We just talked about how they're legislating a lot
safety.
Of that kind of contact
out of the game. It's working. Anytime you penalize something, bottom line for coaches is winning. So that's going to be taught. If you're penalizing, you hit above a certain area, you damn right it's going to be taught, at lower levels, because the bottom line for coaches is winning. So if you don't know how to do it when you get to that level, it's not going to work. So you throw a flag on that'll change things in a hurry.
Well, I don't mean to digress here, but you can't even take air out of football anymore. and we're getting guys out of the game.
What do you think about that?
And we're getting, it's just
deflate. We talk about deflate.
I think it was
take
much
on
to
Deflate
do
Gate.
about nothing. Unfortunately, Tom Brady is sort of was caught in just this is, I think, the epitome of how a storm can blow across and take the lowest common denominator. As you well know, this was a fight at a much higher level,
right.
The league level,
right.
The ownership level, and filtered down. And at the end of the day, and I think this is where it doesn't. There's nothing racial about it. This is you're the quarterback. We can't get the owner. We can't get the coach. We'll take the quarterback.
We'll get you, right.
And it doesn't matter who he is.
Right.
He could be the best player in the league. And it was Tom Brady, and it's rather unfortunate. I think going back, I think if the league, I think if the Patriots, I think if everyone could do it differently, I think they certainly would.
Yeah,
but it was a big story for the NFL. Still, people were still talking NFL all summer.
But the NFL, all publicity isn't good publicity. I think they would rather have not.
Yeah, they could have done without this one.
Yeah, they could have done without this one. Yeah.
What about the kickoffs and talking about taking away the opening kickoff? Do you agree or disagree with that?
The studies show that there are more players injured on these plays in the return game, punt return, kick return, because the players are so much further apart, and then they start with running all at one another in a very archaic way. Right. I mean, this is Roman gladiator stuff.
If you see like Game of Thrones,
exactly, you might see and here they come. There you go.
Right.
So and as you take a look at the numbers and you see the injuries, you say, okay, now maybe we got to do something to clean this up. Maybe we say, hey, it's got to be one-on-one blocking. We've already taken the wedge out of it. Remember the wedge play? And then there was that wedge buster.
Right.
They paid a guy to go run into four guys from a 40-yard sprint, 40 yards away. Now, that tells you that there's no place in the game for that. And they did the right thing. They got it out of there. I think they're
I never thought about it like that. They paid a guy.
They paid a guy.
Who wants to be the wedge buster?
Who wants to be the wedge buster?
Yeah,
now, listen, we already talked about it. As long as you have pockets of our society where people are finding it tough to gain employment, you're always going to have someone say, I'll do it. They might be from that side of the tracks where I came from. I know a lot of guys say, I'll do it.
Right.
See,
And I guess that's my point, Sal. I mean, when I was talking about, I didn't finish my point about taking intimidation and courage out of the game as the major pillars, because you've got people from the other side of the track who are like, and if you're like this upper middle class, say, we can't compete with that. We can't compete with that because these kids, we can't. So how do we take that out to allow our kids to be like we mentioned? Well, I'm not going to mention his name, but how do we? Because there's a segment of society who are getting these gigs, these jobs in football, basketball. They're not going to make that kind of money anywhere else. And our kids are upper middle class. They can't compete with that. So how do we take that out so our kids can also? But you got to find some way to remove those, quote unquote, those people from the game, or make it so that anger, intensity, craziness, we change the rules so that doesn't manifest.
I think when it comes to sports, particularly sports like, say, boxing,
right?
sports like football.
Right.
What I mean, it hurts.
Right.
You show up and you're going to play today.
Right.
There's a potential for danger. There's a potential for pain.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you're going to be hurting.
Right.
As long as you can't totally take that out of football. You can't take that out of boxing. It ain't boxing if you take that out of boxing.
Right.
It's not football if you take that out of football. I use those two sports because there's some inherent danger to be a participant.
Right.
You just know this. It could cost you, okay? As long as you have those elements in sports, particularly in those sports, there's going to be a draw from the human population where people don't have a lot of options. So, in other words, if you go to the higher level of social, economic, demographic, some kid coming out of Harvard, he's got options, whether or not I'm going to be a boxer or go work on Wall Street.
Exactly.
Which one you think he's going to choose? Now,
Unless you're Ryan Fitzpatrick.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Exactly. But Ryan Fitzpatrick is a quarterback.
Right. Exactly.
So the quarterback position, I'll sign up for that one.
He's not a wedge buster.
But I'm not going to be the wedge buster. I'm not playing defensive back. You get it? You see?
Right.
So there's always, now as you go to the lower level of the social economic ladder, a lot of people signing up now.
That's right.
I'll wedge bust. I'll be a defensive tackle. I'll be an offense. So there's always, that's what we got to understand. There's going to always be a long line of people saying, I'll do it.
I'll do it. That's right.
I'll do it.
Even
to
what the mother
improve
said-
their standing in life.
Right.
Because guess what the NFL offers is opportunity.
Exactly.
Opportunity to do what? What every American wants to do.
That's right.
Change the prospects of their future. That's
right.
everyone who ever came here. I don't care how you got here.
Right. That's right.
That's why they came.
That's right. Absolutely. And it's the American dream.
The American
and
dream.
Say, wait, I could do the American dream here,
Yeah.
which is why this whole sports stuff has been compelling going back to the 19th century, because even poor folks, whether it's being jockeys, I can now, I could elevate my life doing this kind of stuff.
There you go.
And my question was, but even if we go back to England in like the 18th century, 17th or 18th century, sports used to be for wealthy people. It was because only the wealthy people could afford the leisure time, the lessons. Then it kind of devolved into like, well, hell, you have the.
You know why? Because the hungry guy was the poor guy.
Right.
The guy who produced competing for survival is going to outperform the guy where it's optional.
Exactly.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
If you take that guy who came from the bottom, put him in the ring with a guy who says this is optional, when it starts to hurt,
Right.
when a few teeth are knocked out on that canvas,
Right.
okay, that other guy says, wait a minute, I don't have to put up with this.
Exactly.
I don't have to be here.
Right.
The other guy, you can knock all his teeth out. He's still going to get up when that bell ring and come to the center of the ring.
Right.
This is a matter of survival. It's about humanity. That's what we've all went from the time we got it. That's some of the involuntary stuff that isn't optional. It's part of our DNA.
Right.
We every single person going to fight to be better.
That's right.
And in some ways, you could see society doesn't have great respect for someone who doesn't fight to be better. I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that in a lot of ways, if you're not willing to compete, to improve your standing in life, some of us tend to look down on that because we kind of look at it as being unnatural.
Right. Which is kind of gets us back. In fact, we're going to take a quick break, then we'll be back for our last little segment here. But it kind of gets back to Colin Kaepernick, not just that, but the idea of what he says he's standing for, or people who, whether it's Smith and Carlos, saying, I'm protesting for people who have no voice. I'm protesting for people who have no power. That kind of stuff, that people will kill people who take stands, but you kind of, whether it's Ali, people do the unpopular things. Is, well, you got some heart to take on this because there's going to be something on the backside.
That's right.
But when we come back in just a minute, I want to talk football. I want to talk. Let's start with Kaepernick. Is he going to start the season?
Right.
Who you think is going to win the Super Bowl? Whatever. We're going to talk a little football because this is every NFL season. It's like a great season.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
it's
Christmas
always a
is
great
on its
season.
way right now.
Yeah, right.
Seriously.
Right. Yeah, so we'll be right back in a couple of minutes. Our guest is the great Solomon Wilcots. He's the tremendous analyst for CBS Sports, CBS Football, Sirius, and he's the ambassador for Huddle Up for new Alzheimer's treatments. And so it's really been fascinating conversation.
Thank you very much.
Great.
It's been great.
And we'll be back in 2 seconds. Hello, everybody. Back, Bill Rhoden On Sports with Jamal Murphy, co-host, good friend, and our special guest, Solomon Wilcots, who's the ambassador for Huddle Up for new Alzheimer's treatments, and also a tremendous analyst for CBS Sports, football, and Sirius XM Radio. Hey, before we started, man, people now kind of frothing at the mouth. Say, okay, we didn't sat and listen to this. What about football? Who's going to win the Super Bowl? Again, I think, Jamal, you mentioned it's like Christmas.
That's right.
We can't wait, like September 11th.
Right.
Right? I mean, we just can't wait for football. What do you think, man? I mean, you got, there's so many storylines. Obviously, we can start with Colin Kaepernick. Is he going to be in San Francisco at opening day?
That is a very good question because, as you well know, excuse me, this week Teddy Bridgewater goes down with a knee injury.
Wow, yeah, right.
And that is sort of the first domino that could open the door for Colin Kaepernick to be dealt. Now, will the Minnesota Vikings want to make a deal for him? That remains to be seen. We also know that Tony Romo is also out for a considerable period of time. Will the Cowboys be interested? So and now Mark Sanchez could be let go from the Denver Broncos. So there's so many different scenarios that now I think there are some opportunities for Colin Kaepernick to get his wish, which he clearly said back during the NFL scouting combine this spring, that he wanted to be traded. He said he wanted out of San Francisco.
In
Absolutely.
to this whole thing. I mean,
Yes.
we're talking about the idealism and the, but practically, you've seen it. When guys want to get out of there,
They'll do just about anything.
What happened to Kaepernick, though, playing-wise? Because it wasn't long ago, that long ago where he was a very productive quarterback. And do you think he still has it in him?
That's a very good question. Listen, he was a very productive quarterback. Here was a guy that had well over 4,000 yards passing, 1,000 yards rushing coming out of college. He was prolific. I saw him in a Sunday night game beat Tom Brady and the New England Patriots at Gillette Stadium, throwing 4 touchdown passes, brought his team from behind, took his team to the postseason 3 consecutive years. I know he shared some of that early time with Alex Smith, but he did take a team to a Super Bowl. Yeah. So what happens with young players, we talk about players and player development, right place, right time, being planted in the right garden. I thought with that team, it was perfect for him because, A, he had a coach in Jim Harbaugh that coached around his skill set. Right. Didn't ask him to do things that he couldn't do, and did play to a greater strength in terms of the run game and a great defense, which they had in San Francisco. All of a sudden, the management, what they did is they gave Colin Kaepernick this big contract. Now, the contract alone didn't unravel things for him, but what did was the expectations for how the ownership wanted to see him play. When you pay a guy $18 million a year, you say, okay, now I want you to be Drew Brees. Right. Now I want you to be Tom Brady. Well, that's not who he is.
Right.
And if you expected him to be that, you should not have gave him that money. You really want to pay him to continue to grow and develop and be the guy he's always been, and then maybe get a little bit better. Right. But then you take his coach away from him. Yep. The team, now there's a huge defection of players who saw that this team isn't imploding from inside. Most teams, when they go from being very good to being very poor, it's because the locker room is just imploding, or the players aren't getting along. Rarely is it done from the top down.
Right.
But they deconstructed a team by getting rid of the coach who gave that team its identity, its will, its drive, its sense of purpose. He was hard on the players, and the player responded by being hard on the opponent. Okay? and what happened is all those things began to come apart. Next thing you know, Colin Kaepernick is not asked to play the same way. He no longer has the same players around him. Great offensive line, defections via free agency. Now this offensive line isn't the same. Frank Gore is no longer behind him, a future Hall of Famer. That defense is gone. Patrick Willis is gone. Every single guy at every level on that defense, guys started defecting and was taking off. They were leaving because they know when they're on a sinking ship. Colin Kaepernick asked to get off that sinking ship, but guess what? No, you can't go.
That's right.
We gave you that money. You got to stay here. You got to help man the ship.
Right. Take swimming lessons.
Well, it's not the same ship.
That's right.
Because they brought in Jim Tomsula. We saw it wasn't the same ship, right. and he was asked to leave. Now, I do believe that Colin Kaepernick thought they were going to get Hugh Jackson as their next head coach.
Well, how great
they interviewed him, decided to take a pass, and made Chip Kelly the head coach. Bill, as you well know, players in this league, they talk.
Right.
When a new coach comes in, they get on the phone and say, how was he in Philadelphia?
Right.
Apparently, Colin Kaepernick didn't get a glowing report because he asked to be traded.
Immediately.
Right. He asked to be traded immediately. So you asked, why is he struggling? I think Kaepernick has to take some ownership for playing better, but I think also we have to recognize from 20,000 feet above, we can see that the landscape around him has changed significantly.
My question, I mean, he can still play.
He can still play.
I would assume so.
He can still play.
I think he can still play. Now, he may need to be transplanted into a different garden. He may need to have different coaches who are going to coach around his abilities that we've seen be successful in this league. Right. I always say that when you get a coach, this coach hadn't been successful in this league, but the player has.
That's right.
But we always want to blame the player, don't we?
Look at Chip Kelly. I mean, it's almost like, I mean, this kind of gets into sort of, you know,
but it is. But that is.
How he's,
yeah.
I mean, Phil, I'm like, you know, as Colin, but wait a minute, are we looking at the same guy? I mean, this guy, you know, but he succeeds up. So he screws up.
He fails up.
Yeah, he fails up.
That's
yeah, he fails up. So, okay, well, he screwed up here. Now we're going to make you head coach. And if that doesn't work out, he'll probably be at Tennessee, in about 4 years. Let me ask you something. So I'm really excited about Kaepernick. But then I guess San Francisco has to have dilemmas. They're going to say, wait a minute. We get rid of this guy, and now he's going to end up in Minnesota. Or there are a few places where he might end up that could be tremendous for him.
There was a couple of teams that we do know had discussions with Colin Kaepernick this offseason and presumably wanted him. Cleveland Browns and Hugh Jackson, they had discussions. John Elway and the Denver Broncos had discussions. So
that's a nice fit.
We know there's a market out there for him. Now, the key was, what are we going to pay him? We're going to pay $18 million or somewhere closer to 15 or 12. And I think, you know, Colin has to understand that he hadn't lived up to the 18. He has not played well. I think we've got to be clear with that. But we do know there's a market for him in the NFL. And I think if he's with the right coach, with the right team, that's going to tailor the offense to the players' ability, because that's what great coaches do.
Right.
You're not gonna see Bill Belichick ask Jimmy Garoppolo to do the same things Tom Brady's been doing for 15 seasons at the start of this year, in 2016, when Jimmy Garoppolo's under center. He's just not. He's going to say, okay, here's what this kid can move now. Garoppolo's athletic. He can move around. You're going to see them use him to that extent. You never saw them do that with Tom Brady. Right. Good coaching knows what players can and can't do, and you never ask a player to do something you know they can't do.
What else intrigues you? What are the other two, maybe a couple storylines that intrigue you going into the season?
The Pittsburgh Steelers, because I think they are a team, you know, they finish red hot. And I'm a big fan of Mike Tomlin. I think he does a wonderful job. His players play hard for him. Yeah. Anytime you get a coach that knows how to tap into players and draw the best out of them, that's what Bill Parcells was. That's what Bill Belichick does. That's why they can win consistently. They have the finger on the pulse of their football team and seem to be able to get the most out of them. Right. And you saw at the end of last year, Pittsburgh Steelers is one of the best teams. Now, Vontaze Burfict didn't take out Le'Veon Bell, didn't take out Ben Roethlisberger, didn't take out Antonio Brown. Pittsburgh might beat Denver in that championship game. I mean, that's how good Pittsburgh was humming. So now they've got to be able to get themselves right. Le'Veon Bell he's got to focus in terms of what's most important here, be able to stay in the lineup for his football team. Ben Roethlisberger is the best player, best quarterback in what is a very tough division in the AFC North, because Cincinnati Bengals are a real good team. Ravens, we know they're going to put up a fight. They don't go away quietly. But I think the Pittsburgh Steelers is one of those teams you got to pay attention to, because if they can get better defensively, we know Ben Roethlisberger is a gamer. he is on track for what we consider to be a Hall of Fame career. And I think Antonio Brown is as good as any receiver in this league.
Right.
And Le'Veon Bell is capable of being a 1,000-yard rusher and a 1,000-yard receiver. He is that good. And so Todd Haley's got himself a really good offense. Mike Tomlin can coach and drive that team deep into the playoffs. And with the Patriots being without Tom Brady early, one might say it's going to be tough for them to get home field advantage. With Denver making changes at the quarterback position, you know they're going to recede and fall back to the pack. So you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, but you also look at a team like Oakland and say, how far can they climb? Because they seem to have something going on out there, and it'll be interesting to see if they can even come up as far as we think they can, and once they get there, can they compete?
Right. I like their quarterback.
I'm sorry. What about Cleveland? I'm kind of intrigued. I like Hugh Jackson a lot.
Yeah.
I wasn't crazy about RGT. Now I find myself, to me, in my mind, he's become a sympathetic figure now.
Right.
Has he tumbled? I mean, did he get it?
Does he get it? I think that's a good question. Does he get it? And what does get it? Get it is, here was a guy that won the Heisman Trophy over Andrew Luck. Here was a guy that was Offensive Rookie of the Year over Andrew Luck. The team and the town fell in love with him. That early success sort of seduced him and maybe even to believing he was a little bit better than the reality of situation. Because when you came out of Baylor, remember, they don't have a pro-style offense. He wasn't asked to play in the pocket. He wasn't asked to do a lot of the things that you're asked to do at this level. And when he was asked to do those things finally by Mike Shanahan with the Washington Redskins, he failed miserably. He did not perform well in the pocket. He didn't see blitz coverage very well, and he struggled. And then Kirk Cousins comes in, and he does do all those things well. Now he takes this team to win a division title, and Robert had to leave town. I think Robert learned by watching that he needs to get better, where he needs to get better, and he has a coach that has told him as much. Hugh Jackson has told him, this is where you got to get better. You have to slide on certain plays. You got to throw the ball away. You can't take sacks. You can't throw interceptions. And here is what we're going to teach you how to play offense and read the defense and be able to move the chains and play smart. And you could see there's been enough humility for him now to know
That's a key word.
Where he has to listen, where he has to learn, and you're not the team. You're part of the team. I have seen that with him, and you could see it in the preseason where he has repeatedly made big plays in this offense, whether it's Terrell Pryor playing wide receiver, Josh Gordon in that game, the third preseason game against the Bucs, Gary Barnidge, a Pro Bowl tight end. He's had big plays down the field. And so Corey Coleman, they haven't even gotten the first-round pick going, but RG3 has been the most consistent part of anything that the Browns have done so far in the preseason.
Wow. And last, the Carolina Panthers. What do you see from them this year? How does Cam Newton come back from that MVP season and then the unfortunate end for him of that season with the press conference and all that kind of stuff?
They're the best team in the NFC. Wow. They to me, they're the best team in the NFC. He is the prototypical quarterback. He is a new age quarterback. Quarterback of a new generation. This guy is 240 pounds, almost 6'6", running a 4.5 40. I mean, when he do that thing, Superman thing, he really is
real.
Metaphorically telling you something. He's bigger, faster, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. How many times have we seen him go over the top and score? How many quarterbacks can do that? The guy scored 50 touchdowns combined last year. Passing, running. He is a one-man offensive show. He has the ball in his hands on every single play.
That's right.
He jump-starts their running game. He did this last year without any receivers.
Right.
Go ahead and take a look at it. How you get 50 touchdowns? You don't even have anybody to throw to.
He made
but
10
a tight
Guinness
end,
stars.
because I give Greg Olsen here. He had a tight end. But outside of that, he's making it happen. Just making it. Now, so where he has to grow is maturity. He's got to be able to handle.
I think he's got to stop dancing. I think we've probably seen the end of the dance.
He just got to be more mature. You know, if you're going to be a leader, man, you've got to, and really, lead for his team, but lead for the kids too. You know, you can't ask kids to look up to you and then you start doing things and say, well, now I'm not a role model. Cam's never said that. I think he does understand his place, but we've seen him have to grow over the years. And I think we saw in a game last year in that Super Bowl, the offensive line couldn't protect him. They couldn't keep Von Miller off of him. He fumbles the ball. his unwillingness to give up life and limb to go get that ball, he told me he wasn't ready to be a champion.
Wow.
It's just plain simple as that.
Wow.
Now, that's where he's got to grow. Now, we can point to all these other areas and have it be hyperbole, but the eye in the sky don't lie. If you're the last one with the ball and you fumble the ball and you see the ball on the ground, whose responsibility is it to get that ball?
See, but he was thinking the same thing you thought when it's time to retire. He said,
he made a business decision.
Yeah, he said, in a split second,
he sure
all
did.
this shit kind of came in,
and
he said, I'm opting out.
See, he opted out. And that's what leadership's about. You don't get to opt out. You the lead. If you listen, I always say you can't lead from the back.
That's right.
You got to lead from the front.
Right. Well,
you got
to biblically, the shepherd often leads from the back sometimes, right? The shepherd, the good shepherd. Sometimes you have
not when that wolf comes. When that wolf, see, times of adversity, you can't be in the back.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Right.
So when you put that ball on the ground, it was no one else's responsibility to get that ball for Cam Newton.
Right.
It was his responsibility.
He should have done. He should have done.
He should get that ball.
He should have done.
Because every single coach teach every offensive player, you carry with you, that ball represents our hopes and our dreams.
Right.
You fumble this ball, you intercept this ball, you throw interception. You're dashing our hopes and dreams upon the rocks. Every coach, Mike Tomlin, to tell you now, that's what he teaches his quarterback. All the great coaches teach their quarterback. Protect this football because you carry with it an entire organization. You throw it to the other team, we coming home a loser. You put it on the ground, we're coming home a loser. Right. That's where he has to improve his game.
That's it, right. Now, just because of these two, I don't know, Jets fans here, there's a reason why we didn't mention any New York teams, but just for the hell of it, just to humor them. So just give us a couple seconds on the Jets.
I'm concerned about the Giants' offensive line. I'm concerned. Here's the thing. Tom Coughlin let go. Tom Coughlin won 2 Super Bowls. Tom Coughlin, we know what we get.
Right.
He was a guy that he held his players accountable. And by the end of the year, the Giants were playing very well. That offense was lighting it up. Typically, when you have coaches like that leave, their energy survives at least maybe one more year. And then sooner or later, the new coach has to infuse his personality onto that team and into that locker room. Tom Coughlin was the bedrock of something good that we knew was of championship pedigree because it goes back to even Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick. He beat Belichick and Brady in 2 Super Bowls.
That's right.
That's all you got to know.
Right.
To say, well, that's the right stuff, right?
Right.
Now, is Ben McAdoo have the right stuff? We don't know. We don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. And I think this is going to be a huge test because defensively they are lacking in terms of personnel. I know they went out and spent a lot of money, but they're still lacking. Offensive line, I'm still concerned. But I do believe this offense can put some points on the board. But they're in a very tough division. The Jets, I think, are a really good football team. I really do. I think Todd Bowles is a really good coach who knows defense. Darren Lee, the first-round pick from Ohio State. This guy is an athletic linebacker, and I think it's going to be fun to watch the way that Todd Bowles uses him because you're in a division, the Jets are, against 2 tight ends that are very prolific. You got to be able to put a linebacker that's athletic, and Darren Lee can run with the Rob Gronkowski. He can. Now, whether or not he's going to come down with it when that ball arrives, because Gronk know how to contest for the ball. Right. But Darren Lee going to be in his hip pocket. You have Martellus Bennett, who's also with the Patriots, another tight end that's very prolific and capable of making plays. Charles Clay with the Buffalo Bills, another tight end that's capable, as athletic, really good at making plays. Defensively, the Jets, we know, have a great defense. But to me, you got to be able to match up with athletic tight ends in the NFL because they have a really good secondary. But you can't waste your secondary members by putting them on Gronkowski. That's going to be the job of Darren Lee. I already believe the wide receivers, whether it's Decker, whether it's Brandon Marshall, with Fitzy, they're going to make some plays now. they really are going to make some play. I love Matt Forte in the backfield.
Right.
He can run it. He can catch it. I feel really good about the Jets. To me, is can you beat the Patriots? That's all you can even talk about.
Every year. That's it.
That's it.
Those
Because they
first-
won
those
10
first 4
games
games,
last
baby.
year. They won 10 games last year, didn't get in, right?
Right,
right.
right.
So
That's
there you
right.
go. That's where they're at.
That's right.
That's,
Hey, I
that's,
guess
that's the
it's
role.
been-
That's the call right there.
Huh?
That's the call.
Hey,
I just want to say one
Oh,
and
yeah,
real
yeah,
quick because I know we got to get going. I want to thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for
It
coming.
allows me to be able to promote our worthy cause, our Huddle Up for New Alzheimer's Treatment campaign, which again we started and began to promote back at Super Bowl 50 in San Francisco. We continue to heighten the awareness for the need to participate in clinical studies. And for anyone who wants to know more about the mindset study and how they can participate, all they need to do is log on to the website, www.alzheimersglobalstudy.com. That's www.alzheimersglobalstudy.com. And we want to thank you guys for allowing us to share with you
oh
today.
man, this is great, man. This has really been wonderful. If anybody has never heard you before and they've heard your analysis, they know why we love you.
I appreciate it.
Great, absolutely.
Greatly appreciate it, Bill.
Our guest has been Solomon Wilcots. He's a Hall of Fame to be NFL broadcaster for CBS, Sirius, NFL Radio. He's also the ambassador for the Huddle Up for New Alzheimer's Treatments. And take this seriously, because this is very seriously. It doesn't have anything to do, let's say, with football concussions. It just has to do with awful disease.
Our overall cognitive health. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Hey, Solomon, thank you very much. Jamal, thank you very much.
Thanks,
as usual.
Jamal.
Thank you.
Kevin, I think we'll thank you on the back end when we hear this. I also want to thank David Shaw, who actually brought us together about this important issue. So, David, thank you very much for trekking all the way up here on the one train in the sweltering heat. There's nothing hotter than the subway in New York in August. Man, I mean, with the rats even. You see the rats, man. Brother, this is just too much. Anyway, hey, everybody, thank you very much. God bless, and we'll see you next week. Bill Rhoden